Good afternoon, Noble, and welcome to today's Candidates Forum. My name is Keenan James, and I serve as your Deputy Director. First, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and taking time to hear from our candidates for national office. We appreciate your attention during this matter, and we also appreciate you taking time to make over some changes as we've experienced some technical difficulties. We certainly hope that you experience a very smooth operation this afternoon, but most importantly, you're able to hear from the candidates and engage. I would now like to bring forward our elections chair, Mr. Dan Selby, who will give us an update of where we are with our national officer candidates, as well as give us some details on how we'll proceed with today's candidates forum. Mr. Selby?
Thank you. Once again, my name is Daniel Selby. I'm the elections chair for Noble. The candidates forum today will be small because since we had several candidates voted based on uncontested race on yesterday at the business meeting, we have reduced the panel size, and today the only candidates will be for national second vice and treasurer. And let me take the time to thank the candidates that are already in. For our federal assistant, we have Jeffrey Fobbs, associate member rep, Michelle Teje, parliamentarian, Rosalind Fenner, Sergeant at Arms, Kevin Granfield, and Gina V. Hawkins for our treasurer. So I guess we'll go right into the candidates forum. Mr. James, is that where we are now?
You're correct. Just want to make sure everyone knows our two positions that we're going to hear from today are,
okay.
First, we're going to hear from our candidates for financial secretary, and then we'll also hear from our candidates for second vice president. As Mr. Selby announced, we had at yesterday's business meeting, we had candidates who were elected to those positions, and we will certainly hear from them later on in our virtual conference. We'll have them acknowledge you all and thank you for all your support as we go into this next year. Mr. Selby, I think we can go ahead and bring forward our candidates for financial secretary.
Okay, at this time, we'll bring forward Ms. Lou Dixon for financial secretary.
Yes. Good evening, Noble. It is really a privilege and pleasure for me to be here with you today. I very much appreciate the opportunity to come to you and talk to you about my desire to obtain your support and, more importantly, your vote to make me your next Noble National Financial Secretary. I think that there is no more urgent time for the need for Noble's voice to be out there exercising justice by action and showing that we are that bridge to the community. Therefore, strong, capable, and experienced leadership is what's required. That's what I offer you at this time. I have experience in oversight of large financial operations, grants, contracts. I also have some direct experience in looking at Noble National's finances. And I'd like to bring that experience to bear in serving you and in serving Noble, an organization that I deeply love, that I'm committed to, and that I have been serving over the past several years. I believe that a key to the growth of Noble, as it is the same for our chapter, is developing, mentoring, and guiding the next generation of law enforcement executives. To that end, I started a career team in my Washington Metro chapter, and through that vehicle, we actually provide mentoring and guidance in any area that's needed so that we can make sure that we are helping law enforcement professionals achieve their career goals. This is the key to the growth of our organization. In addition to that, I think that integrity of finances is absolutely critical to both maintaining and growing our organization in membership and in sponsorship. To that end, I would commit to you that I would be your servant. I will bring to bear my experience and my leadership skills to make sure that I am carrying forth all of the practices that have been begun by the predecessors to this position position, and also to build and identify new ones as needed to make sure that we are clearly, accurately, and transparently reporting on Noble's finances and its membership status. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be here. I pray that you and all your families, members, are safe and being able to navigate these very challenging times that we're in now. And again, I ask for your vote for Lou Dixon for your next Noble National Financial Secretary. And I welcome the opportunity to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
I do have can you hear me? Okay. I do have a couple of questions, Lou, that was prepared for the candidates. If elected financial secretary, how would you specifically leverage your skills and resources to help Noble achieve one of its strategic goals to diversify funding sources?
Thank you for that question. I believe that the key to diversifying our finances lies in part with our membership. We have a host of very talented and skilled professionals in our organization. I think we should reach back out to the chapters and actually leverage the resources that they might have available to them. Many of those chapters have received grants in their own right. And so I think that we should bring in those voices, those contacts, and those skills to help bring in additional funding sources. In addition to that, based on my prior experience, I would actually encourage us to continue to push toward our federal resources. When I was working, I had the privilege to go and meet with congressional staff, both in appropriations and in the area where I was working. And I think that that is a key for us to obtain more and continued funding. Also, to go to Congress and get money, show them what a great organization we are and the powerful work that we're doing.
Thank you. I have one more, if I can get one more in real quick. As a part of Noble's strategic plan, membership retention is a priority. As a Noble member, how would you assist with increasing membership retention?
I think that from my conversations with people as I prepared for possibly obtaining this position, I heard a lot about transparency. So I believe that a very key element of maintaining our current membership is ensuring that we are showing our members that we do have transparency in our leadership, in our finances. So I would work certainly as a part of the board and with the other board members to identify the legitimacy of those concerns and then to do whatever possible so that we could address those concerns. I believe the second key to growing membership is in making sure that we are mentoring and guiding and developing the next generation of law enforcement executives. We've got to make sure our training programs are on point, that we have mentoring programs that are on point, and that we are all making ourselves available as the strong and dedicated leaders that we are to identify and help others to achieve their law enforcement career goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Mr.
Selby,
I would also like to let our viewers know that you can
Selby?
submit your questions. If you have questions, you can submit them via chat, and we will try and get to them.
Thanks, Mr. Selby. Just wanted to remind everybody, yes, please use the chat feature in order to submit questions. Wanted to also bring our other candidate on, Ms. so that you can introduce yourself and as well respond to the questions. Mr. Selby, if you would go ahead and maybe restate those questions once Ms. Spruill introduces herself. I want to give her the opportunity to answer those two questions as well before we go on to a third question, all right? So Ms. Spruill, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, good afternoon, Noble family. It is my pleasure to greet you today from New Jersey. I am praying for everyone's health and wellness and their families during these unprecedented times. Although virtual, the Noble Conference is a great way for us to reconnect. I've been noticing in the chat area, everyone's saying hello, miss you, miss you. I have the same sentiments as well. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Quavella Spruill, also known as Q. I have worked my way through law enforcement from the rank of detective through chief, and presently in my present role as police director in the township of Franklin, New Jersey. I also am a member of the Attorney General and PERF discussion platforms and committees on reform. These platforms and committees lead to significant organizational and policy changes within the state of New Jersey and nationwide. I am presently also an adjunct professor at a state university here in New Jersey, and I teach in criminal justice, various courses. I love my students. I love mentoring our young people. I am also presently the New Jersey Executive Vice President in the New Jersey chapter. I previously served as the Recording and Corresponding Secretary. Nationally, I have served on the membership committee as co-chair, which has given me insight and experience because I attend the national board meetings annually, and I understand the ongoing concerns that are brought forth by the board and also by our members during those meetings. And we have done great work, and I am very, very sure that we can continue to do that great work, and enhance the areas where we need improvement. I was a presenter for our national conference assessment training last year in New Orleans. I'm sure a lot of you out there attended. We had a overflowing room. We were overbooked. We were preparing members for promotional and acceleration within their departments. I've heard throughout the year that members really benefit from that training. Some were accelerated, and they gave us credit to that training. We hope to keep that going in our next upcoming conference. I chaired a 3-day conference for the Region 1 last year that was attended by over 200 members and guests. We reached out to various departments throughout New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut to attend that training. My experience in law enforcement will definitely benefit our members. As financial secretary, I will ensure that we have financial and overall accountability. I've proven I can do that. You don't rise through the ranks leading various organizations without knowing how to do that. I've managed millions of dollars within my organization. I've also helped in growing hundreds of thousands of dollars within a Noble, New Jersey chapter. I will ensure that the results of our annual audits, which are performed by a private company, are also presented to the board and our membership at large so that we can address any inconsistencies or other issues and collaborate with our members to their satisfaction. In regards to our membership classification, it is a region and a national matter, and we must ensure consistency. So I will also ensure that that is one of my duties, and I will work on that. I plan to help select a general counsel so that we can have legal advisement and expertise in the areas of nonprofit organizations so that when issues or questions come about regarding the bylaws or other issues in our organization, Noble is prepared. I will also explore growth within Noble. One of those ways is to help create a foundation that would allow Noble to be involved in legislative and other political decisions that are made that will impact law enforcement throughout our nation. We can be similar to the Congressional Black Caucus. Right now, as a 501c3, we cannot do that. Lastly, but most importantly, as a member of the executive board, I will be able to provide a timely perspective to make differences on current law enforcement issues such as use of force and community policing, which will allow Noble to be a part of justice by action. We can perform our mission, and we can be leaders at the table and continue to be leaders at the table in various issues that are developing and have occurred. And for the sake of time, I welcome you to Google me, and you will see the great work that I have done, that I am doing, along with our members of the New Jersey chapter and Region 1 at this time. So I tell you, I have been proven to be one of the best, and I take that seriously. And as your next financial secretary, I guarantee you, I will work hard for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cross, I would ask you, give you the opportunity to respond to the same two questions. I think you might have done one already, but if elected financial secretary, how will you specifically leverage your skills and resources to help Noble achieve one of its strategic goals to diversify funding sources?
So first, one of the things that I was always interested in is helping develop our Ways and Means Committee. So that would be something I would be looking to do, evaluate and redevelop that, working with our treasurer, Chief Gina Hawkins. Also, there's ample opportunities for Noble to expand its brand online and at conferences and everywhere. I think that our name should be known just as Starbucks is known. And if we can do that, we can just explode financially. It's just a matter of time. Also, one of the things that always I think about is how certain chapters are able to operate better than others. I think Noble should develop a training manual to help chapters develop. It's like a how-to manual to help them establish relationships with local businesses and community organizations and develop their own sponsorships and partnerships to help them be financially savvy. If the chapters are we can be successful. Oh, Mr. Selby, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. As a part of the Noble Strategic Plan, membership retention is a priority. As a Noble leader, how would you assist with increasing membership retention? I think you might have mentioned it, no, but I want to give you a chance.
Yes. And again, I think one of the concepts is that all members must realize that they are important to this organization, and it's our job to make everyone feel a part of the organization. Every level of law enforcement, local, state, county, and federal plays a part to this. It's great for us to have that relationship with each other. Going through COVID, going through hurricanes in our area, I can always reach out to our fellow federal and state Noble members as a resource. So we need to bring that together. We need to do a better job at encouraging inclusion and involvement in our committees and other developments throughout Noble. And social media is key also. That is how we will get the information out there. I think if we could just keep that going, I think we've begun that within the past year. Okay. Thank you.
That's okay. I think we have a question.
Yes.
From the associate member rep, Tajay.
Okay.
At this point, coming from the chat room.
Good afternoon.
Can we bring that up?
My name is Michelle Tajay, and I serve as the Noble National Associate Member Representative. The following two-part question is for our financial secretary candidates. Have you ever served in a sworn law enforcement capacity?
Okay, we can't seem to get that up, so thank you.
Discussions that will take place on the board surrounding matters of law enforcement and criminal justice, in addition to the role you will have as financial secretary should you be elected. Thank you for your response.
All right. Mr. Selby, you're muted. Okay. Okay. I think we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Can we bring Ms. Dixon on?
She's here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
We have a question from the chat from Ms. Tajay, who's associate member rep. She asked a question, I think, for both of you.
Yes, thank you.
If you can bring that up, I don't know, has she asked a question already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yes.
hear it. Okay.
We saw the question, and the question was whether or not we have ever served in a sworn law enforcement position. And the short answer to that question for me is yes. It may not be the traditional law enforcement entity, the public policeman that you might normally think of. I served for many years, over 30 years, in various offices of inspectors general. And that is a sworn law enforcement organization. I was sworn in when I received the position to serve and to protect and to ensure that the laws of our country were followed. I ended my career with the Department of Transportation. I ended as the highest ranking Black executive in that organization. I did rise to the senior executive level, allowing me to manage and oversee over 200 staff. We worked hand in hand with the investigators who were as the policemen on the street, the gun carriers, the ones who would actually pursue the arrest. However, they worked with us to do a lot of the behind the scenes work. In the course of my career, I worked on projects with the FBI, with other federal agencies to actually bring criminals to justice. Very proud of that service. And so, yes, I have functioned in a law enforcement, sworn law enforcement capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles.
Yes. So as I previously stated, I have accelerated through the ranks from detective to lieutenant to captain, deputy chief, chief, and now police director in the town that I work in. And I would say the last 4, I was the first female and I was the first African-American female in all those roles. So I think my experience will add value to the discussions because I consider myself to be a role model to my peers and officers. And I've served at multiple ranks within law enforcement, and I understand the issues at those ranks. I understand the issues at the lower ranks. We know it's frustrating and being promoted, and I understand the complexities of being executive staff and making decisions within law enforcement agencies on policies and practices and procedures. So I continue to do my work. As my role, I serve on panels, as I previously stated, on the state and national level. And I also serve on committees, which have actually gone from committees to full-blown units within the state attorney general's office. So I consider my work to impact directly with what I'll be doing on a national level and my experience in law enforcement.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for your time and your dedication and your interest in serving on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Selby. Thank you, Keenan. Thank you,
Not
Lou.
a problem. I'd like to remind everyone that if you have questions, you can pose them in our chat area. So if you do have specific questions for our candidates, please feel free to post them through the chat, and we'll try to get those questions to our candidates as soon as possible. We did have a couple of them come through. I think we actually were able to answer some of them through our chat and our various responses. There were some questions that came up from various things.
We've heard
about them. Those things range from our collegiate members and how we may be able to do something with them, developing them, our structure, just things that are on some of our members' minds as you take on the possibility of leadership within Noble. And so again, we certainly thank you all for coming today, for spending some time with us. And since we started with Ms. Dixon, we'll close out first with Ms. Spruill. If you want to give us a minute or two to kind of summarize your vision, and then we'll go to Ms. Dixon. And then after that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to transition over and we're going to start with our second vice president candidate. So Ms. Spruill, if you would go ahead and take this opportunity.
Okay, so quickly, one of the things I also wanted to get in was the fact that many of our members are subject matter experts. And I think with us being partnered with IACP and CRITAC, we can lead the way in being subject matter experts, especially in the community policing, diversity and inclusion, implicit bias. Let's face it, we have experience from both sides of those. So I think that us being at the forefront of that and evaluating how we can be a partner and an active participant in that will lead us into a better Noble as well. I look forward to being selected as your financial secretary. I humbly ask for your vote and your acceptance. And I look forward to seeing everyone again next year. These are crazy times and I miss everyone. And you really don't miss what you had until it's not there. And that national conference, I think everyone's really missing it right now. So I thank you again for all of this. And I hope to see everyone in the chat later on. Thank you.
Awesome. Ms. Dixon, we'll give you the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone again for your time and attention this afternoon. I want to really encourage everyone to stay safe because these are perilous times. That said, to be a part of this organization is a privilege. You are allowed the opportunity to meet and mentor and guide, as well as to be mentored and guided by those who have come before us. One of the things that I'm very proud of my chapter with our career team is that we did partner with our scholarship chairperson to work to establish collegiate chapters. We have worked very closely with a number of young people to try to help guide them and mentor them and to give them the skills that they needed, whether it be in resume preparation or interview preparation or whatever they needed to be mentored in, so that we could help them to either get into law enforcement or to advance in law enforcement. I worked with both the past and the current federal representative on our diversity recruitment initiative to assist in getting other young law enforcement professionals into the federal sector. The federal sector is a key component of Noble, as are the associate members and all of our regular members. If elected as your next Noble National Financial Secretary, I would strive to work with each and every one of you, to listen to you, to make sure that I am representing you on the board and trying to help address any concerns that you have. Again, I have a vast amount of experience working on other boards as a secretary in the audit oversight capacity. I rose through the ranks of the organizations that I worked in, from auditor to manager, supervisor, and then to executive. I'm very proud of the work that I did. I have a strong commitment to Noble, to its advancement. I think Noble's presence right now could not be more critical. Again, I thank you for your time. I ask humbly that you consider voting for me, that you do vote for me for your next Noble National Financial Secretary. Thank you. And again, to all of you, take care and be safe.
Again, Ms. Dixon, Ms. Spruill, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for joining us. For our members that are viewing, I'll say it a couple times so that everybody gets it. The elections start this evening. I'm sorry, the elections start this evening. I got a lot of things going on. The elections start this evening, Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern. This Saturday, today, 5 p.m. Eastern, in just about 2 hours from now. And those ballots will be released to our members. You'll get an email from Simply Voting that lets you access that ballot. You'll be able to go on and cast your ballot for the next 24 hours. So the balloting will run from 5 p.m. on Saturday until 5 p.m. on Sunday. Also in that email, you will also receive instructions that tell you how to even vote using your telephone. So let's say you're not able to get to the internet, but you can dial a phone number from somewhere, wherever you may be relaxing amid this pandemic. You'll be able to jump on the telephone, jump on the internet, and cast your vote. So we encourage all of our Noble members to participate in this year's election. Again, Ms. Dixon, Ms. Spruill, thank you so much for participating with us this afternoon. And we're going to get ready to jump in and have a conversation with our second vice president candidate as well. Mr. Selby, you're back there with us. We're going to get ready to transition into our second vice president candidates. I'd also like to remind the members that are viewing with us, use the comment section on our live stream to send in questions. We want to hear directly. We want to try to engage our candidates and hear from you, questions that you may have for them, so that we can kind of grow your knowledge, that you can make an informed decision for our candidates that are running for office. So again, thank you to Ms. Spruill and thank you to Ms. Dixon for taking time out of their schedule this afternoon to participate. Mr. Selby, are you all ready for us to go ahead and jump into our second vice president candidates?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, we'll do that. We'll go ahead and bring all three of our second vice president candidates on screen. We'll bring them up. We have Chief Mitchell Davis. We'll have joining us Ms. Brenda Goss Andrews, as well as Wayne Harris. All three of our second vice president candidates. So all three of them there. Wanted to make sure. So it looks like you all are there with us virtually. Mr. Shelby, you got them too? Just making sure we're all seeing it. Awesome.
They're coming. All
right. So what we're going to do is we're going to allow everyone 5 minutes of introductory time to kind of give an overview of yourself, your vision, where you see fulfilling your responsibilities as a leader within Noble. We'll give everyone that opportunity. We'll also answer some questions. We'll also, again, encourage our members who are participating with us via our live stream on YouTube. Submit your questions to our section so we can get them to our candidates and get you answers today. We're going to have our candidates speak in alphabetical order based on last name. And so by default there, that'll go and start with Mitchell Davis. So Mr. Davis, we'll start with you if you would like to give us some opening remarks.
Thank you, Noble. My name is Mitchell Davis. I am the police chief in the village of Hazel Crest, which is right outside the south side of Chicago. And I currently serve, I just finished my third term as your national recording secretary. I humbly ask that you consider entrusting me with your vote for second national vice president. Just to take a few moments to give you a little bit about my background in case you're not familiar with me. As I mentioned, I'm the police chief in the village of Hazel Crest. I'm in my 29th year in law enforcement. 11 of those 29 years have actually been as a police chief in that position. As far as Noble is concerned, I currently serve as a special assistant to our Chicago Metropolitan Chapter President, Eugene Williams. I am also a past president of our Chicago Metropolitan Chapter. As far as police organizations and my leadership experience are concerned, I'm currently the president of the South Suburban Association of Chiefs of Police, which is the largest regional police chiefs association in the state of Illinois. I also serve as the first vice president of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. Next year, when I ascend to the presidency in the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, I will be the first African American in the 80-year history of the organization to hold that position. I'm also on the board of directors for the IACP. I was just appointed by our current president for the International Chiefs Association as executive board of directors member for the IACP. A few months ago, our governor here in the state of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, appointed me to the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, the POST, some communities what it's called. So those are just some of the positions that I hold from a law enforcement standpoint, currently as a law enforcement leader. From an education standpoint, I know one of the things that Noble was founded on, one of the principles was to do research as it pertains to law enforcement. And I'm currently in my dissertation process for my doctorate in organizational leadership. And my dissertation topic deals with the relationship between the African American community and law enforcement. So, that's kind of a little background about me. If you want more information on the things that I have done, that I am doing as a professional in law enforcement and for my organizations, you can go to mitchelldavis.org to get more information on that. As far as Noble is concerned, as far as leadership in Noble, some of you may have seen a little short video clip I put out earlier in the week talking about times such as this. God has placed Noble in place for just a time as this. We were founded back in '76, but we've been doing our work. We've been cultivating things for this time in history. What we're going through right now, you already heard from other candidates, is unprecedented. And we are uniquely positioned to move to the forefront even more so than we have been. We have been doing the work. Those of you who know me know that I've been doing the work. You may have seen my class, Leadership in Law Enforcement from a Black Chief's Perspective. I gave that class at one of our Noble conferences a couple years ago in Atlanta when we had our conference there. I teach on these things, and they're not new to me. I didn't just start teaching and acting and speaking on these subject matters that we're going through since George Floyd was murdered. I've done, can't tell you how many interviews I've done over the last few months because folks know that I've been speaking out on these topics all along. And now, once again, I'm versed in these things because I've done them all along. So Noble is uniquely positioned. So Noble has a responsibility to our communities and to our profession to use our experience and use the human resources that we have within our organization at all levels to make sure that we are contributing to our community and providing the leadership that we need. We have an external and an internal responsibility to those that are in Noble and those that are in our community. The internal responsibility is to help to provide opportunity for those individuals that are in Noble at all levels and utilize the resources that we have. We have so many people that are experts in so many different fields that, they don't have to be a chief. We got to utilize those individuals to help promote our organization. And in doing so, our external responsibilities will also be met. We talk about justice by action. There are people out there in our communities who don't have a voice. It is our responsibility to have that voice and to show that voice and to speak up for them. Those are the things that I do. I do them every day as a law enforcement professional, as an organizational professional. And I just ask respectfully that you consider entrusting me with your vote to be able to continue to do so as a leader from the second vice president level in Noble. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Chief Davis. We appreciate that. I think our next, we're going to give the opportunity for our next introduction, and that's going to come from Miss Brenda Goss Andrews. So we'll bring Miss Goss Andrews up on the screen as well. All right, there we go. Ms. Goss Andrews, thank you so much for participating this afternoon. If you would take a couple minutes, introduce yourself about your vision and where you see yourself as second vice president of Noble.
Thank you, Mr. James, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Brenda Goss Andrews, retired Detroit Police Deputy Chief and Region 4 VP. I've been the VP for 4 years. I spent 30 years with the Detroit Police Department, and I came up through the ranks as a female on patrol. I walked the beats in Detroit. It was a little bit, it was hectic back then, just like it is actually now. But I persevered. I was a single mom raising a son, went back to school and got my master's at Michigan State. I got my bachelor's from Howard University. And I'm not going to go on a lot about my bio, FBI Academy as well, but you can read about me at www.noblebgossandrews.com. I want to have some excitement in Noble. If any of you have been at the range, I know here in Detroit, our range master would say, is the line ready? Meaning, are you ready to fire? So I'm asking Noble, are you ready? Because I am ready. I'm fired up and ready to go. I'm ready to serve Noble. Wearing one hat, I'm ready to march for social justice. Not just once a year when we are at the conference, but we should be marching all the time through our communities to fight systemic racism and all the things that plague our community. If you see my picture, oh, it's over my shoulder. You can probably see that was a picture of me as a young police officer downtown and how I started out. But my platform, One Noble, One Team, is inclusion, that all Noble members are important and should be heard and valued regardless of your rank, your title, your position. We have immense talent, you've heard that already today, and experience in this organization at all levels of our membership. But sometimes we only hear from a few. It's time we need to hear from everyone. It's so many of you out there that have skills and training, subject matter experts, but no one has asked you. So I ask you, and I will be asking you, to come to the forefront and let's hear from a lot of you that are out there. The second VP oversees committees, and we have about 14 standing committees. Many of you know that I was the civil rights chairperson for about 8 years. So I'm an organizer and a mobilizer. And with that team of talented people that was on that committee, we started out with 50 attendees. And it was a starting out committee with, I believe, Darcy Blakely and Lynn Cook. But we were able to grow, and I was able to put that team together, and we were able to grow that to almost 500. Sometimes we had to turn people down. So those are the kinds of things I can do in terms of mobilizing it and having energy in Noble. People wanted to come to that civil rights brunch. I'll be reaching out to everyone, the associates, the federal reps, and everybody in Noble to join one of the committees. 14 committees. There's a place for everyone, and to make sure we deal with relevant topics that are facing our community today. How are we helping the community? Those kinds of things. I wanted to start a Homeland Security Committee. I told the Federal Caucus this the other day, that we have the expertise. So when we have times like this, that we have experts with boots on the ground that can liaison with those other federal entities, with local police, with governments, so that Noble can be a part of that and provide the expertise that we have in this organization. I also told the federals that in August, I will work with the federal rep to understand the federal sector. I came from a local police department, so I need to understand the federal job. What do you do? I cannot lead people if I don't understand what they do or care what they do. So that would be one of the things that I could do, starting almost on day one. Developing future leaders. It's not about us. It's about what we have right here, the knowledge that we have that we need to impart to our young leaders, our young line officers, agents, associates, our our middle managers. We have to offer them this training and this mentoring so they can be successful and excel. In fact, I communicated with Chief Alan Banks in Round Rock, Texas, and I told him I wanted to form a council of chiefs. We have chiefs all over this country in major spots in the country, and I'm so proud of all of them. He said, if you do something like that, let me know. I want to be a part of that. So I've already started to begin, some of this work. And lastly, social activism. I went to Howard University. That was kind of the seat in DC of activism. I went on a protest, it's like these young protesters, and I got tear gassed. And when I saw those horses coming over the monument, I was like, okay, it's time for me to go. But I understand that passion. And we have to get back to that passion, Noble. We have to speak up and speak out on those issues that face law enforcement in our community. And we know right now there's a plethora of issues that we need to be in the forefront of. Noble must be relentless in our voice and relentless in our pursuit of justice by action. I ask you again, Noble, are you ready? As the late Congressman John Lewis said, it is time to get in good trouble. And I am ready to get in good trouble. Noble, are you ready? Vote for me, Brenda Goss Andrews, for second VP. And I
thank you, Ms. Goss Andrews. We appreciate that. We appreciate all of that insight that you gave to our members. I remind our viewers, if you have any questions, please submit them through the comments on our YouTube live stream so that we can get those questions to our candidates during our question and answer portion. We'll now go ahead and our third candidate for second vice president, Mr. Wayne Harris. Mr. Harris, are you there? All right. I see you on screen. We'll make sure you're all unmuted there. Perfect. Mr. Harris, want to give you the opportunity that the two other candidates have had. Please introduce yourself, your vision, your goals, where you see yourself in the leadership role with Noble. So, ladies and gentlemen, our candidate for second vice president, Mr. Wayne Harris.
Thank you, Mr. James. Good afternoon, Noble. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you. As some of the candidates have said, I regret not being with you in person. I would have loved to have had this conversation with you face to face. So my name is Wayne Harris, and I am running for second VP, and my information can be found at wayneharris.org. If we have not already met, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a retired deputy chief of police from Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York is the third largest city in the state of New York, and we have a police department there of over 1,000 people. And in my time as the deputy chief of police, I served in a number of different capacities, one of which happened to be the Deputy Chief of Administration, which led me to running for the position of Financial Secretary. But the last position that I held with the department was that of community engagement. I was responsible for being the person to go out into the community and make sure that the relationship between our agency and the department and the community was as strong as it could possibly be. And I was put in that position because that's the way I ran my career. From the time I was a police officer to the time I was a deputy chief, I placed myself in the position of those that I was working with. So much so that the mayor of the city of Rochester appointed me to the position of community engagement and allowed me to go out into the community, develop the strategies necessary for improvement, and to work on bridging the gap. So much so that I actually wrote the blueprint for engagement for the city of Rochester, which they still operate under now. I am also a graduate from the FBAD National Academy. I have a bachelor's degree in organizational management. And I'm here today because I believe in the business of Noble. Now, when I took over as financial secretary, Noble financially was in a strong position, but some of our business practices were not as strong as they could be. And it was to that end that I set about trying to stabilize the national office, which led to the position of deputy director, which I'm very, very happy to say Mr. Keenan James was hired for. But I saw that we were receiving negative information from some of our creditors. I saw that people were starting to feel poorly about the business that they were doing with Noble, and I thought that was contrary to what Noble needed to be doing, and it would weaken us moving forward. So I set about taking care of those processes. And I also recognized, based on our strategic plan, that Noble needed to be in a position to represent the law enforcement industry, and be the voice of reason, be the voice of information and expertise moving forward. And as we've seen recently in the events that have been occurring nationally, Noble's voice is sorely needed. So one of the things that I did while in the position of financial secretary, after being asked by President Bumpers to chair this committee, was to develop the political policy that Noble will operate under, so that as a 501c3, we would not get in trouble with the IRS for engaging in activities that would further our mission and also further the law enforcement industry. So I was very happy to do that. That's the basis of my campaign. I'm not here because, you know, I have stuff to put on my resume. That's not my point here. I'm about the business of Noble. I'm about making sure that Noble is going to be strong 25 years from now. And to do that, we need to continue in moving forward. Now, as we've seen, there are things happening as one of the other candidates said, there are things happening in our country right now that speak to the reason Noble was put together. There's not another organization in the country that can give our perspective, that can speak with the voice that we can speak with. Now, I also very much believe that it should not just be me as a second vice president or even ultimately as a president that should do that speaking. Our membership is our strength. Our associate members, our federal members are our strength. So as a second vice president, one of the first things that I do and one of the first things that I spoke about was establishing a committee that will take a look at best practices within our organization, going out and taking a look at some of those chapters that we have that are doing amazing work, that have built relationships in their communities, that have built relationships with the corporations in their communities, that are financially strong. But I want to populate that committee with members of the associate members and also with members of the federal representatives, so that two things will happen. One, our associate members will get the opportunity to work on a national committee. And the second point is that moving forward, all of that information that we gather from this committee will be available for future use, so that moving forward, Noble's chapters will be as strong as they can possibly be. Now, that's where our strength lies. That's where our win will be. That's when, 10, 15, 20 years from now, Noble will be operating as strongly as possible. How do we get there? We have an assessment center training that occurs normally at our annual conference. As the second vice president, I'm going to make sure that our regions engage with our associate members to make sure that assessment center training is available for them, so that they're prepared to move through the ranks if that's what they wish to do, but also a specialized assignment training is available for them. So in case they don't want to move up the ladder, but they want to be in homicide, or they want to be in forgery, or if they want to be in robbery, so that they're prepared at every step of the way to move to the next level, should that be what they want to do. And the same thing for our federal members. Now, I've done an awful lot of stuff while I'm here. I'm a retired individual that doesn't owe any allegiance to a police department. I don't answer to a mayor. I'm here because I want to make sure Noble moves forward and is as successful as possible. So thank you very much for your time. I humbly ask for your support and your vote for second VP.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. We appreciate your introduction. Mr. Selby, we have introductions from all three of our second vice president candidates. I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to go and offer some questions to the candidates. I'll also remind our viewers to check on the comments. If you can post questions to the candidates, we'll try to get them as soon as possible. Mr. Selby?
Yes, I would like to, Mr. Harris, while you're there, if elected second vice president, how would you specifically address one of the organization's strategic goals, which is to increase membership by 30%?
So thank you, Mr. Selby. That's an excellent question. And I think one of the ways that we can increase Noble's membership is by remaining active within the country, and especially in the conversations that are going on right now. Now, the more we can put forth members of Noble into positions where they're they're seen by the public, they're seen by their peers in the law enforcement industry, they're seen by others that want to come into the law enforcement industry, the better off we will be to do that. Now, there's strategies that we can use, one of which would be a membership challenge, to challenge all regions, to challenge all chapters to increase their membership by, say, 5% or 10%, and then have an award at the end of the year that our chapters or our regions can win for however many people were brought in. Now, I know we've done stuff like that in the past, but we can continue to work in that vein. I think more importantly, though, the idea was going to be getting out there in front, showing Noble in the best possible light, and making sure that everyone knows about us so that when we do reach out to our members, our younger members, those that are coming up through the ranks, they'll see us as something that they want to aspire to be.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews, the same question. Do you want me to read it again, or?
No, I haven't, Mr. Selby. Thank you very much. As the Metro Detroit chapter president at one time for 4 years, one of my main goals was to increase membership, reclaim old members, and retain our current members. And we were very successful in that goal. As region VP for the last 4 years, my goal was to increase chapters and membership. I brought on the Iowa chapter, the first one ever, and the Central Ohio chapter, and we're working on bringing in another one from Illinois. I've conducted, in conjunction with the links, 2 town halls. And what's significant about that is that I had a list of law enforcement people that came. They weren't Noble members. So I have them on emails and asked them to join Noble, to call me about joining membership. So we have to do kind of that outreach in terms of reaching other people in other organizations, as well as some of our Black organizations, that are out there. The National Black Police Association with Sonia Pruitt as chairperson. We have many of those that are out there. We need to reach out to them, partner with them, and maybe get them as members. We need to take the social media platform of Zoom and all of that and have forums. And I've done that to outreach to get people. So there's many different ways now, many different facets, and we've got to tap each one of those in terms of membership. Plus, we have to be excited ourselves. We just say this, we have to be excited ourselves about Noble. We are all ambassadors to getting membership. When I was in Chicago one time and I saw Arvis said, "Do you know about Noble?" He says, "Yes." I said, "Are you a member?" He says, "No." I said, "Well, this is the person that you need to call, get to that meeting," and he ultimately joined Noble. So we all
Thank
have.
you, Ms. Andrews. Now, Chief Davis, the same question.
Passionate, yes.
I know.
Thank you,
Chief Davis.
So, as a matter of statistics, to grow our organization by 30% is going to take a little over 1,100 members, new members. And our strategic plan, which the question is designed around, is a 3-year strategic plan. So what that breaks down to is about 6 people per chapter over a 3-year period, which is not a crazy number. Some chapters will get many more people than that. Some chapters may be smaller and they may not be able to, but to have those numbers in front of us to show how feasible it is to grow at 30% is what we actually have to start with. The strategic plan has elements embedded in it as to how we can reach that level. We talk about going out there and recruiting. One thing that we're talking about doing here in the Chicago Metropolitan chapter, and that's where I would focus on, is at the chapter level. Here at the Chicago Metropolitan chapter, at the Chicago Police Academy, which not just Chicago goes there, communities from all around go there for their recruits. They have different organizations that come in while people are still in the academy to introduce them to those organizations. That's one of the things that we're looking at doing here in the Chicago metropolitan area. And just being that example, being visible in the community. And when you see people get promoted, when you see people, new chiefs get brought in, contact them as a leadership person, contact them to congratulate them and let them know about Noble if they don't already know about Noble. So it's marketing that we have to do. And it's about putting things out there at our local levels that will allow us to hit those 6 new members per year over 3 years. So it can be done, and we can do it through our strategic plan.
Thank you, Chief. Now I think we would go to the video, Keenan.
Sorry about that. We actually have a question, Mr. Selby, from
Question from the chat.
We'll go to the question from our chat. The question is for all of our candidates, and we'll start with the response on this one from Ms. Goss Andrews. The question is, how can you leverage your present position to keep Noble out front and present on addressing issues confronting our industry? And I'll go ahead and kind of figure out to say our industry to being the policing profession. So how can you use your current position to help keep Noble out front of the issues in the policing profession?
Thank you, Mr. James, for that, and to the person with that question. I believe I've addressed a lot of that because I am constantly doing the work. Like I said, the town halls that I've done with the links is one way to stand out. And we did a Facebook Live. We had about 700 people on the Facebook Live and maybe about 400 or 500 on the Zoom participation. And that definitely kept Noble out front. We had links organizations all over the country. We had people on that from 31 different states. So Noble was definitely, out there. I have one coming up August 10th. It's going to be powerful, dealing with police recruiting. And we already got responses and people that are, wanting to know when will that start, and get on that. So I will use that because I'm constantly, doing things in my community, in Noble. All my friends know about Noble. So it just takes that day to day. You have to work at it every day. You have to wake up thinking about Noble on your mind and what are the kinds of things that you can do to promote Noble. So I bring a wealth of experience. I've been on many boards throughout the city, and I want to leverage all of that, including my experience on the police department, to draw members in and to keep the Noble brand in the forefront of the country. In fact, in front of the world. I can keep talking.
No, I think we're going to.
There's a message. I think it's saying that I'm supposed to. I'm sorry, I missed that message.
Something coming from the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
So, as far as how would I use my current position and my current influence? Well, I'm a sitting chief that I'm involved in a lot of stuff, and I know there's somebody out there that's thinking, well, he's already involved in this other stuff. How could he possibly have time for Noble? Well, let me make it clear to you. Everything that I do ultimately results in Noble being represented. With everything that we're going through, me being the first African American to be elected to office in the Illinois Police Chiefs Association, that's an honor, but with that comes responsibility. But what I do is people know me from my involvement with Noble. With the IACP, being in the IACP, the President Davis, and there's about 3 or 4 other Noble members that are on that board of directors. One of the things that happened at our board meeting that we had back in San Diego several months ago was the president now has a task force out now that's talking about relationship law enforcement. Well, one of the things that we found was that they were talking about respect for the police. That was one of the elements of this task force. Well, if you're talking about trying to develop relationships with the community, you can't just talk about respect for the police. You got to talk about respect for the people in the community also. And I was the person that brought that out in that meeting. Well, and then, you get the normal response. Well, yeah, you're right about that. But so we have to be at the table, and I'm at those tables, and I get calls all the time about my input from a Noble standpoint. Our attorney general for the state of Illinois and a state rep and a state senator here in the state of Illinois called me after the George Floyd incident happened and says, hey, you know that there's going to be a bunch of legislation about to be passed in the state of Illinois. We need to know where Noble stands. We know you're with the Illinois Chiefs, but we need to know where Noble stands so that we're properly addressing the concerns of Black law enforcement officers that have a true concern with our Black community. And that's what Noble brings to the table. And that's what we can do and we will do as we move to higher heights in leadership in law enforcement.
So I think I'm up for answering this question now. I only belong to 2 organizations right now. These are my primary focuses. One is Noble. The second one is the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and I sit on their board of directors. And I got that position because I've been a national public speaker and lecturer for them and author for them for a little while now. I transitioned from that, and based on the work that I have done, I was asked to serve as a recruiter and ultimately asked to serve on the board of directors. The conversations that we're having in the country right now are the only things that I do, and I represent Noble on every single opportunity that I have. For example, I was just recently tapped to debate one of the councilwomen from the city of Minneapolis, basically the councilwoman that represented the district where George Floyd was killed, on their idea of disbanding the entire Minneapolis Police Department. It was it's called the Monk's Debate. I was taking the con to the resolution that it's time to defund or abolish the police department entirely. These are the conversations that I have, and I was tapped to do that because they know that I'm the one that will represent Noble. I will represent the voices of law enforcement. I will represent the voices of Black law enforcement, and I will tell the truth. I will get to the point where people understand what law enforcement really is and not leave it up to the movies and the media to paint us in a negative light. I've been doing this work. This is all I do. So as your second VP, I will continue in that vein. I will be that voice that leads Noble into the direction to make sure that we make our industry as absolutely strong as possible. When I speak for Noble, whether I speak for LEAP, I will be speaking to make sure that our industry, that our members are as absolutely strong as they can be, and that our industry is going to be successful in connecting with communities and building the relationships that are necessary in order for all of our communities to be healthy. This is what I do.
Mr. Selby, it looks like we also have a question from our federal rep. So we'll go ahead and take the question from our federal rep, Mr. Jeffrey Fobbs. Mr. Fobbs?
Greetings, Noble family. To the second VP candidates, this is Jeffrey Fobbs, Federal Assistant to the National President. My question to you, if elected, what is your plans of inclusion of the federal membership over the next 3 years as you represent Noble on the executive board? Thank you.
We'll start our responses with Chief Davis. Chief Davis.
Okay, Mr. Keenan, are we ready?
Yes, sir. There's a saying that goes, when things are better for everybody, things are better for everybody. So whether we're talking about the federal contingency, whether they are our associate members, whether it be our executives, what has to happen is, from an inclusion standpoint, is making sure that we all have opportunity. And while everyone always say, or there are folks that say, hey, I want this, I want opportunity, but everybody doesn't step up to the plate. But as second vice president, you're responsible for committees. And I think I heard somebody mention earlier, as far as making sure people are involved with committees. The president is responsible for assigning people to committees, but committee meetings are open to anybody. So as second vice president, there would be things that I would do as far as bringing the committees together. I would encourage folks that may not have been appointed to committees to at least attend the meeting so they can have input and know what's going on. Now, the one committee that is kind of open and there's no limitations as to people that can be appointed is the Education and Training Committee, which I've been on for several years. I've actively been on that committee. So I would recommend that the federal contingency and the associate member representatives, who that's their job to look after their contingency, be part of that committee to ensure that your educational needs are being met and that any other concerns that you may have with committees are brought to the table. And on a monthly basis, have the committee chairs all meet to come together to make sure we know how we're moving forward.
Thank you, Chief Davis. Chief Harris, if you would take that next.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, my belief and my vision for Noble is in our membership. Those are the people that I want to push forward. So the federal members that we spoke about earlier, I spoke about some committee assignments, and similar to what Chief Davis is saying, as our second VP, I will make sure that there is representation on all of our committees for all of our members, most specifically our federal members. And when we're talking about assessment center training, as we're talking about advancement, I will invest all of our time, as much as my time as I can, in making sure that our future is strong. And you get there by making sure that all of our federal officers, our federal members, are included in what we're doing, are given the experiences to serve on national committees, are trained and receive the best possible training outside of their respective agencies to make sure that they can advance as strongly as possible and as efficiently and as successfully as possible. I believe in the growth of Noble. That's why I'm here. And I know that Noble won't be anywhere without our federal members. We won't be anywhere without our associate members. We won't be anywhere without our correctional members who have been sometimes ignored by our organization. We need to make sure that we're embracing the law enforcement industry in all of its forms. So my federal members will be very, very well represented on all the committees that we serve, and they will receive the training necessary to make sure they advance should they want to.
Ms. Goss-Andrews, you take the question next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. James. Well, first, I'm glad to hear the word inclusion used by the other candidates, because that's been the hallmark of my campaign, One Noble, One Team, inclusion. I think I've probably already talked about this, but I'm going to say it again. The federal sector is important, just like all of our sectors are important. Correction, someone mentioned everyone. When I had the Civil Rights Committee, I had, I think, at least 3 federal members on that committee from different federal agencies. So having experience with committees, I would certainly make sure that each committee had federal representation, because they bring a wealth of knowledge, you know, to the committee, as well as associates. So everyone has an opportunity across 14 committees to be a part of it. I would meet with all of those committee chairs and talk with them. We'll probably Zoom with them at this point, or conference calls, because I had conference calls with my presidents once a month. It probably wouldn't be that often, but to talk to them and see what the issues are and ask them for a roster so I can see how many people are on there, if every region is representative, and if every sector is represented. I talked about a Homeland Security Committee, and I think we have that. I know we have that expertise to have the Homeland Security people with that management and with that expertise to chair and be a part of that kind of committee as an ad hoc committee. I talked about Zoom listening sessions, because I don't know a lot about the federal sector. And a leader is someone that admits that they don't know and then goes about an action plan to know. So that would be something I would do. And I'm very excited to be able to do it, you know, to understand each one of the federal agencies. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We'll stay with you, Ms. Goss-Andrews, as we take a question that came in directly from our chat. And that question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge for Noble going forward? And if selected, how would you ensure that we continue progressing during these times? Again, the question for all of our panelists, and we'll start with Andrews, is what do you see as the biggest challenge for Noble going forward? And if selected, how would you ensure we continue progressing during these times?
Well, yes, these are turbulent times. And I think some of the things that Noble is already doing, that each one of us are already doing, is what's called for. But I think real change happens with social activism, grassroots social activism. Noble, we have to get back out in the community. And I'm not saying that we are, but we need to take a different approach, a more active approach. It's a little bit difficult now, and we're doing that now through Zoom meetings and town halls and those kinds of things as best we can. But as soon as we get back to in-person, we have to get in the streets. We have to march, and we have to be out there keeping people engaged in what's going on in our community. Systematic racism. We have to deal with poverty, housing, healthcare disparity, especially with this COVID, because all of these kind of make that circle and make that loop back to crime. It becomes the nexus of all the crime and all the different things that we're seeing now, right now in our community. So Noble needs to be able to lead and be at the forefront of those issues through our Justice by Action, through our activism, you know, type of approach.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Chief Harris, we'll go to you next to respond to that same question. The biggest challenge for Noble going forward, and how would you ensure we continue progressing during these times?
So I think the biggest challenge for Noble right now is actually what's happening in our country. Noble has a perspective that no one else has. We have the ability to reach corners of this country, corners of our communities that, you know, the other organizations that we've mentioned don't have the capacity to do. And I think the biggest challenge for Noble is to continue to set ourselves up as the premier law enforcement organization to change the dynamic of law enforcement and the relationship that it has with the community. Now, earlier we spoke about Crytek, where I believe one of the financial secretary candidates mentioned Crytek. Crytek is a grant program that other law enforcement organizations take part in, IACP, National Sheriff's Association. But if we're not advocating for our individuals, our members to be subject matter experts and used out there, then we're not going to be able to continue to move Noble forward. We need to make sure that we're advocating for ourselves. We need to make sure that we're engaged in the conversations that are going to shape the way law enforcement is done moving forward in this country. We can do that. We can do that every single day by not only getting out into the community, but also establishing relationship with our municipalities, with establishing relationships with those corporations that support us, and some that don't. Some don't know that they actually are fighting the same kind of fights that we are, to make sure that our countries and our communities are as safe as they possibly can be. That's where Noble's challenge lies. Noble's challenge lies in us establishing ourselves and continuing to establish ourselves moving forward. But we can take care of that.
Thank you so much, Chief Harris. And then we'll go to you, Chief Davis, if you would take on the same question.
Thank you, sir. I also see that Noble's largest challenge right now is seizing the opportunity. That's where our challenge lies. We're already being tapped on in so many different directions to respond finally at the level that we should be. And the biggest challenge is making sure that we are taking full advantage of the opportunity that we have at hand. We have to make sure that we are poised and we are ready to continue to do what we're doing, but to expand what we're doing to show that we are that organization, and not just for Black folks, but for law enforcement, period. Because once again, when things are better for everybody, things are better for everybody. And when we fight the fight that we have been fighting all along on this higher level, it gives us an opportunity to show that, hey, we should have been tapping into these folks more a long time ago. But now that we're here, the challenge for us lies to make sure that we take full advantage of what we're doing and that we continue to move forward. I mean, we've gone international. You know, I'm sitting on a working group now with the UK where we're meeting on a regular basis, hearing the challenges that they're having, because what's happening right now is worldwide. And listening to the challenges that they're faced with, and this is Noble, that I work the working group with Noble that I'm sitting on, listening to the challenges that they face in the UK. If you didn't listen to their accents, you'd think that you were talking about issues here in the United States. So these are worldwide challenges. We are uniquely poised, and God has us in this place for a reason, so that we can address those things. He's prepared us for this time, and it's time for us to step up and step into our rightful place in history, and we will do that.
Thank you all for your responses. I think that our members really can feel energized about what each of you has shared as far as you see in your vision, what Noble is doing. And I take a question and pose it to each of you, and I'll start with Chief Harris on this one. We're really in the midst of a change, a reform that we've really talked about in policing. You mentioned earlier conversation about defund police, and we talked about Crytek, and Ms. Andrews, you talked about, you know, getting into community policing, and all of those terms and those qualities and those philosophies are kind of what's being discussed as we talk about police reform. But it's one thing to put police reform on paper. It's another thing to put police reform in practice. As you aspire to the second vice presidency, which also ultimately moves up to the presidency of Noble, how do you see, starting with Chief Harris, how do you see us or Noble positioning ourselves to take things from policy and what's on paper to what's in practice in our communities?
So one of the things that we have going for us that unfortunately some agencies have moved away from is the blueprint for the 21st century policing that, you know, many in Noble support. And since Noble is in a position with 50% of the major police agencies in the country being commanded by Noble members, Noble is the organization that can actually make sure that what is on paper becomes policy, becomes the example that is set for all other agencies going forward in the United States, and to my colleague's point, across the world, because we are a global organization. So, you know, we talk about police reform, we talk about community policing, we know how to do this. But Noble is uniquely positioned right now with 50% of the major police agencies, you know, being commanded by Noble members. We have the opportunity to not only lead by example, but to bring others along and show them exactly how policing can be done. That's how we do this. The other thing we need to do is we need to start telling the truth about policing. We need to educate the community about policing, what it really is, our history. We can't be afraid to talk about where law enforcement came from, how it's impacted, mostly disproportionately to the communities of color out here, but also how we can make that change to fix that. That's what Noble can do. That's where Noble is strong. That's justice by action.
I then toss the question to Ms. Goss Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. James. Some of this I've responded to. I'll talk about it again. I think I talked about, a grassroots approach to activism and working with our communities, community policing, and working with, everyone in the organization, working with Urban League, working with NAACP, and working with other organizations such as that. But we have to get involved in the legislative process. Here in Detroit, I was elected as a precinct delegate. So I go to the meetings, I knock on doors, or at least I used to knock on doors, and talk to people and engage them, in the legislative process. So we have to continue doing that the first chance that we get. Be on Capitol Hill. We need to spend time in Washington. As the second VP and a person that has a little more time not having a job, I can go to DC. We can engage our Congress people in their offices, make appointments. In fact, Noble has done that before. We can sit on that floor and listen to what's going on and be the voice of Noble on issues dealing with law enforcement, police reform, the transformation of policing. So we have to be involved, number one, in that legislative process, especially now it's needed more than ever before. The Democrats have come out with a plan, and everybody has a plan, but the plan is no better than the implementation and the action that goes behind the plan. So Noble, justice by action, we need to get behind the action to transform police reform and things that are going on in our country. So my two things would be a grassroots approach as well as a legislative approach.
And then Chief Davis, again, the question for our audience is, how do we go from policy on paper to in practice with policing reform? How would you kind of use your position as second vice president to do that?
Well, you know what, sir, I'd continue to do what I'm already doing. So my first exposure to that, going from theory to practice, actually was as a president, and this is I'm speaking about Noble, as a president of Chicago Metropolitan Chapter years ago. Many people don't remember that there used to be an assault weapons ban, and it was overturned. And I represented Noble as a Chicago chapter president, going to Washington, D.C. with representatives from the IACP and from the Illinois Chiefs Association back in the early 2000s to try to talk to our legislators and doing those things. Talking about going on Capitol Hill. This past October, I represented Noble on Capitol Hill. The National League of Cities had a panel that I sat on Capitol Hill. It dealt with and it's so interesting. It's about the defunding. So, but they didn't know it. It was the National League of Cities had a panel that talked about bringing resources to police departments to deal with mental illness, to deal with addiction, to deal with homelessness, so that law enforcement officers wouldn't have to deal with them. I sat on that panel back in October, and I just talked about how legislators from here in the state of Illinois called me personally to ask me, what is Noble saying? What is Noble saying about these things? Because I just mentioned it earlier, legislation is going to happen. We want to know Noble's perspective. So having relationships and having the reputation of being in Noble and being active in Noble and speaking out on behalf of Noble will open doors, because folks want that input and they will call you and you'll have that opportunity to have that input. And we have to continue to do that, to be in the boots on ground, being with the legislators and having a relationship enough with them so that they will come to us, they will listen to what we have to say, and we'll have that input. Our president just sat before the Senate not too long ago with the IACP president and other leaders in law enforcement, and she did a tremendous job. Gina Hawkins has done it. So we're doing that work. We got to continue to do that work and make sure that we hold our elected officials accountable.
Thank you all. I think one of the common threads that I heard from each of you is definitely a working, a collaboration with our members and our chapters. And so that takes me to the question for each of you. And I'll start with Ms. Andrews. How would you, as second vice president, work with whether it's your local chapter, but most importantly, the 50 chapters in Noble? how have you had experience working with your local chapter, and how would you invigorate and get active those members in the local chapter to be a part of that lifeline for Noble? So the question is, how would you kind of work with the 50 chapters across the country, using some examples that you may have that really energize the activeness of the members in Noble?
Thank you, Mr. James, for that question. And I have talked about that. And I think it's bringing excitement and energy. People get excited when you are excited. And that would be one of the main things, is to let people know about Noble. Someone mentioned the history. A lot of times we don't tell our new members, or we don't talk about how Noble started, you know, what kinds of things that we went through to get where we are today. But being a region VP, I had an opportunity to certainly travel within my region as far up as Minnesota. But in this role as second VP, I would just be an extension of the region VP, because that's just the region VP, me being the chapter president and on the committee, was really a second VP in training. So I would visit the chapters, and I would go out to the region trainings when we start that, and support the region VPs and support the chapters, and really listen to, you know, what they're saying, and giving them an opportunity to talk to me. I said before, throughout the year through Zoom listening sessions. We can't just wait until one point in time to engage our chapters. So I think by showing excitement, showing that I care, by going and being there, wanting to hear them, wanting to hear their concerns, getting feedback through whatever form that I can, I think that will energize them by just me being excited about it and wanting to be part of Noble, wanting other people to be part of Noble. So I will just be continuing the things that I have already been doing for the last so many years, even as chapter president and even before then.
We'll then go to Chief Davis. What would you do as far as the relationship with the chapters? How do you build that relationship and activate our members at the chapter levels?
Thanks for that question, sir. We have a lot of chapters that are doing great things. I think personally, what I would do is, first of all, make sure we're properly spotlighting those folks that are doing those great things. Once again, we got a lot of chapters doing some tremendous things that people don't know about. They in their immediate areas, or maybe even in a region, people know about it, but we've got to make sure that it's a concerted effort, that we've got a website that's up and running, and that we use the technology that we're now even more familiar with to put out there what people are doing, to incite other people to say, hey, well, you know what, they're showing the Chicago chapter doing stuff, well, we're doing something similar to that, or we feel is better than that. So let's make sure people find out about that. So to make sure, and I think Brenda talked about it, making sure that we're energizing the folks that are out there and incite them to move forward and become more active. We start that at the chapter level. That's where it all begins. And the chapter level represents everybody across Noble. It does not have any favoritism. The chapters do what they do. But putting out there programs from a national level that they can use, like the Law in Your Community, but then incenting them to go out and do things on their own, and recognizing those folks that are I think Wayne spoke on it earlier, people that are out there doing the great things, and making sure that we're spotlighting those folks and just making it a positive thing, a competition almost, for folks to want to go out there and outshine other chapters. And I believe that's how we can move forward.
Thank you, Chief Harris. So I'll finish up that question with you, kind of working with local chapters, your local chapter. How would you kind of, bring that relationship and strengthen that activeness with our local chapters across Noble?
So thank you, Mr. James. That's a great question, and it speaks to one of the things that I've campaigned on since this whole campaign has begun. One of the things that I will do as our second VP, as I mentioned before, is establish a committee to go out and to determine best practices of all of our chapters. And the reason I'm doing this is because one of the things I recognized very early on was that we had some chapters that were hugely successful, while we have other chapters that struggle to gain a footing. But I know that there are best practices out there, and there's no reason why one of our chapters is brilliantly successful while others aren't. So my idea is to go out, take a look at all of those best practices, and then bring that together, put together a playbook, if you will, put together, a best practices, document to say, listen, this is how you go about fundraising. This is how you go about increasing your bank account so that you not necessarily have to rely on Noble National. This is how you establish relationships with your community. This is how you try to affect the way some of policing is done in your community to make sure that it's done as efficiently as possible. This is how you develop relationships with your municipalities and also with your corporations that are there. That's what we need to focus on. And I'll tell you the other thing we need to focus on too. We need to start spreading out and making sure that all of our chapters are impacted as well as they can be. Now, so far, and this is just Wayne's opinion, but we haven't done it as well a job as we can with Region 6. It's a huge fertile area for us to go out and really begin to establish our presence out there. So the creation of even new chapters in Las Vegas, for example, and to continue to grow Region 6 to make sure that's as successful and as well populated Noble-wise as everywhere else in the country. We have a lot to do, but we can do it. And that's what I've been campaigning on. Let's establish those best practices. Let's make sure that every single chapter that we have is operating as efficiently and as successfully as possible.
Well, thank you all for taking time out of your schedule today to participate in this conversation. I think this forum has been an awesome opportunity. We've been working through a virtual setting for our conference, and I hope that our members were able to engage. We did take in some questions from our members directly through the chat. We tried to offer those throughout. We want to make this as interactive and as realistic as possible. So we thank everyone for participating virtually. As we close out this candidates forum, I do want to give each of our candidates 1 minute to kind of close out things, kind of giving an overview of your vision and what you want our Noble members to know about you. So I'll start with Ms. Goss-Andrews. I'll then go to Chief Davis, and then we'll close out with Chief Harris. Ms. Goss-Andrews.
Thank you. And I think I've probably gone through a lot of those things, but I've come a long way. Over my shoulder, you can see the police officer. Someone painted that of me when I first came on the job. And I started with Noble as a volunteer, in awe of all the ones I saw with white shirts and gold badges, and wanting to be in that position one day to be promoted and be part of Noble. Those dreams have come true from that young lady that was sitting back there a long time ago. But I just want to reiterate that we do need to bring excitement. We need to bring passion. We have young people out there saying, well, why should I join Noble? I hope that I've given you an opportunity to want to join Noble, because I want you to come. We will not be here long. So we need to pass the knowledge and the expertise that we have gathered in all the 25 and 30 years of our careers. I'm ready to pass that torch to the young people. I've been a VP in training. I said that for years and years and years. I've honed my skills through being a chapter president, a committee chair, the region VP, as well as all my community activism and legislative things that I do here in my community. But I want to package all of that up and give to Noble. So we have to do that. We have to be ambassadors for Noble, each one of us. So in closing, I just want to say I am that courageous, unbossed leader that can and will speak out on behalf of Noble and law enforcement, and certainly for our community. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Goss-Andrews. We appreciate that. Our members, as I'll reiterate a couple times, voting is going to start at 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over those logistics here in a bit. But Chief Davis, want to give you the opportunity to take a minute to close us out.
I just want to thank the Noble membership for the opportunity to serve these last few years as your National Recording Secretary. I'm going to, whether I'm elected or not, I'm going to do the work of Noble. I'm going to do the work of law enforcement. I'm going to do the work of our Black community. That's not going to change. The God has put us in this place. He's uniquely prepared us for this as individuals and collectively as an organization. And I just ask that respectfully that you consider entrusting me with your vote as second National Vice President. Noble is a tremendous organization. As I mentioned, whether I'm elected or not, I'm still going to continue to do the work. I appreciate the opportunity. Go to mitchelldavis.org. That's mitchelldavis.org if you have any concerns or questions on the things that I am and have been doing. So thank you once again. God bless us all and have a great day.
Thank you, Chief Davis. We appreciate you taking time to participate as well. And we'll finally hear from our third candidate for second vice president, Chief Harris. Chief Harris, if you take a minute to close out comments for our viewers.
Thank you, Noble. I appreciate this opportunity. I am, from the bottom of my heart, humbled to have had the opportunity to serve as your financial secretary. I'm honored to even run for the second VP and to help us move forward. You know, I'm, as I said earlier, I'm a retired individual who is dedicated and has dedicated his retirement on making sure that our industry is as strong as it can be. And these are difficult times that we're experiencing right now, from COVID to the protests, to the situation with George Floyd, with Breonna Taylor, with Ahmaud Arbery, with the young man Brooks down in Georgia. We have much, much to do. And I'm in a position as a retired individual to make sure that I'm solely focused on making sure that Noble's point of view, Noble's perspective is heard, and that we are that change agent that our industry so desperately needs. So I thank you. There's really no more that I can say other than thank you for this opportunity to serve you for this past couple of years. As Mitch said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm hoping to win. I would very, very much like to represent you, but if not, then I will still be here and I will still be having these conversations, and I'm still going to be working to make sure that Noble is as strong as it can be and that our industry is as strong as it can be. And I would very, very much like for all of us to be a part of that. So thank you very much for this opportunity. God bless you all, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Chief. I want to try to bring all of our candidates and participants in as we kind of close things out. Thank you to everyone, our candidates, our viewers. I will honestly tell you, I'm crossing my fingers to get over this next 2 minutes because I think it worked out pretty smoothly. So I'm definitely satisfied with that. So thank you to, okay, I won't say anything. But thank you again to our members. Please engage our candidates. They've offered websites, email addresses. You'll have the opportunity over the next day to engage them, ask any questions that you may have. Make sure you can make an informed decision. So again, thank you to all of our candidates. And my number one thank you is thank you for stepping up to be a leader in the organization. And it's sometimes difficult to find leaders to take on roles. And so you've definitely shown that you're ready to take on a role, elected, selected, or just because you have the energy to do it. So thank you again so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon and participate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Great forum. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Selby, we'll close out with a final couple of details for everyone. Our election will start out here in about an hour. So in just about an hour at 5 p.m. Eastern, you should receive your ballot to participate in the Noble National election. We'll have two specific positions that are up, our National Second Vice President and our Financial Secretary. As Mr. Selby talked about earlier, the other positions were voted on during our meeting, and so we've already moved forward with those. You'll also have the bylaws proposals that will be a part of that ballot as well. So please take the time when you log into your ballot, you'll have the opportunity to review those bylaws proposals so that you can vote yay or nay on those. So you'll have that opportunity starting at 5 p.m. Eastern today. 5 p.m. Eastern today, and it will run until 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So please look for that email from Vote at Simply Voting to make sure that you can participate. If you're not able to get your ballot for some reason, please connect with a member of our Noble team. Email addresses are readily available. I've seen them out there. There's always our info at Noble National web email address that you can get in contact with staff, and we can try to assist you. But please try to do that as soon as possible. Again, that starts at 5 p.m. Eastern today. Voting ballots will go out and you'll be able to access. I would say that again, you'll have access to your ballot at 5 p.m. today, and it will run until 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Mr. Selby, any final details that you want to remind our viewers before we close out?
No, I was just going to speak on the minutes, but you did. So,
well, it sounds like we've covered. So again, I thank you all for taking time to participate in today's candidates forum. We'll also be sending out some updates on our virtual conference. We're going to be making some changes. Hopefully we'll have a very crisp and successful virtual conference. We want to make sure that you get the best training opportunity. We want you to be able to engage our panelists, hear quality programming, and engage with our members as well. So look for more updates this weekend on some transitions that we'll be doing for our conference, but we want you to stay engaged and stay a part of Noble. As always, please join us, follow us on social media, whether it's through our YouTube channel, our Facebook, or Twitter. Please join us, follow us, like us, and also recommend your friends to join us, follow us, and like us. My name is Keenan James. I serve as the Deputy Director of Noble, and I am proud to be associated with Justice by Action. Thank you, and you all have a great evening.
Thank you.